Before I start stitching, I'm going to show you my Fluff and Stuff method and how I get the big quilts through the machine. Now, one of the things that I think is nice is I have a knee lift, and the knee lift just basically looks like this. And what it does is it operates the presser foot. And I will say that my knee lift, by operating the presser foot so that I don't have to constantly either be touching a button or fiddling around behind the back of the machine, I'm going to say it saves me roughly 20% of my sewing time. I use the knee lift, it goes up. I use the knee lift, the presser foot goes back down. That is really a nice feature. And so that way both of my hands can be occupied on the quilt without me having to stop, take a hand off, and mess around with it. So when I'm doing my Fluff and Stuff method, what I do is I get the whole quilt in my lap. I'm never really happier than when I'm sitting right in front of my machine with a big quilt in my lap. And I decide where I'm going to sew, and I just pleat the quilt into my right hand as far over as where I'm going to start sewing. I did take the lid off of the machine. It's still the same beautiful Isidore that I've been sewing on, but I took the lid off so that you would have better visibility to the thread and to what I'm doing. So I get to where I'm going to start sewing. I bring it under the machine, bring the whole quilt under the machine, and I just keep it comfortable in my lap. And then I take all of this that I pleated into my right hand and I just shove it through. And actually I call this the Fluff and Stuff method because fluff and shove just doesn't sound as good. So then how I feed this through is, and I use my bat scooters to do this, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. I would do my backward stitches. Then I would start my forward stitches, and I would just sew just far enough until I feel that least little bit of resistance. Usually that's only about 4 or 5 inches, and then you're going to feel it. And if you've ever felt that before in your quilting, as soon as you feel that little bit of resistance, then your stitches get really small and you've lost all sense of direction. It just doesn't keep going straight because it's caught somewhere and you need to uncatch it. So you stop, and I stop needle down, and then I grab some of the quilt, I stitch another 4 or 5 inches, I stop, I grab another few inches of the quilt, and I stitch 4 or 5 inches until I feel that little bit of resistance. Then I keep moving it along. So what I'm doing is fluffing, and that keeps the gravity from grabbing it and pulling it under the table. I'm fluffing, sewing, fluffing, sewing, fluffing, sewing, stuffing. So that's how it works, fluff and stuff. If you don't fluff, you can't stuff. And that's how I work it through a few inches at a time for my Fluff and Stuff method. Now what I'm doing with the bat scooters is I found I need traction. And the problem I personally had with the gloves is that they were a little too hot, and I had to keep taking off a glove to use scissors or to grab threads or all the little small tasks that we do. And so I found that these foam rubber, they grip the quilt so you don't have to. You just put them, and I like them pointy side in, so you put them pointy side in. And the reason I do that is because that way you can get closer to the needle without having to stop and reposition your hands. The smaller one goes in the inside where your quilt's scrunched up so you have less room. So you've got, well, I call them baby bat and mommy bat, you know, for the disparate size. And then you can just move it, and I can actually just move the quilt with a fingertip. It really does work that easily. So this is what I'm using to help me ease it through.